That's good. The sun is up, the drinks are hot, and now it's time for our first cup. Today, service of our subjects. So, I caught YouTube red-handed last week, experimenting on me. Red-handed? Red algorithm? Whatever. Point is, I caught YouTube experimenting on me last week. Here's how. So I have a channel, Tingenism, that I put this show, First Cup, on, right? And I also have my own personal channel, like the one that I've had like forever, right? Since YouTube started, the one that I use for my own personal watching. And surprise, surprise, my personal channel is subscribed to Tingenism, the channel where First Cup is, right? And so it affords me this kind of cool little window into how YouTube is sending my content out to different people, right? And that means that sometimes on my personal channel, on my phone, I'll get served First Cup sometimes immediately when it comes out, which is 6:45 a.m. Pacific every Monday. That's just how it's been for the last while now, right? Sometimes I get it then, sometimes I get it later on in the day, sometimes I don't get it at all, right? But I know that YouTube is kind of testing, right? Well, last week I didn't get the content when it came out. I didn't get it on Monday. I didn't get it, in fact, until the middle of the week. It's last week's episode, Orphan in Mint Condition. But when I got it, there was something extra special about being served. It said that it had 0 views. And this is really what tipped me off to the fact that there was an experiment being run here, right? Because, I know that I don't have a ton of subscribers on YouTube, but I'm thankful for each and every one. And part of the reason that I'm thankful is because my subscribers are actually pretty damn engaged, right? By the middle of the week, my average First Cup video right now is somewhere between like 10 and 15 views. But, here on my phone, it's saying, oh, it's got 0 views. I go and check on my laptop on the Tingenism channel. And, oh, look at that, 18 views, right? So obviously YouTube is running an experiment on me. And it's not for my not for my benefit, let's be clear, right? I have a lot of ways, you have a lot of ways that we can tell YouTube or any platform about the content we want to see. We can subscribe to a channel, we can like it, we can comment on it, we can donate, we can share the links from our account, right? But what YouTube was doing wasn't in service of any of that. It was really just trying to say, hey, if I show you this content days after it's published, and if I gaslight you into thinking that nobody else has watched it, will you still watch it? Is this content really compelling to you? Will you still look at it? That's what YouTube is doing, because YouTube ultimately wants to keep me, keep you, keep everyone on the platform for as long as possible. That's why I was being experimented on. So as I'm sitting there realizing all this, I started thinking about research I've done and research that's happened in social science. And one of the biggest tragedies, actually, in social science research of the last 100 years. So if you've taken a psychology class, really, of any type in the last 40-ish, maybe even 50 years, you've probably heard the name Stanley Milgram. And if you don't remember Stanley Milgram's name, you've probably heard of the obedience to authority experiments. And if you can't remember that, then you probably remember the experiments where someone shocked people in another room and saw how that interacted with someone else, right? The shock experiments. Yeah, they're pretty famous, and with good reason. But something that's most people aren't told when they're taught about Milgram's experiments is what happened before he ran all of them. Because you see, Milgram had a hypothesis. He thought that in running these experiments about obedience to authority, that he would find something unique, something different, perhaps a susceptibility in the German people in Germany, right? Because Milgram wasn't running these experiments out of pure curiosity. Milgram was running them because he, like many other people, had lost friends and family members to World War II and in the Holocaust, right? Milgram wanted to understand what could make the German people be so susceptible to authority that they could help facilitate genocide. And Milgram wasn't alone in this, right? Like, to his credit, Milgram surveyed a bunch of people around the world, a bunch of doctors and scientists and other kind of thinkers of the time, and asked them, Do you think it's something about the German people? And most of them said, yeah. Like, not everyone, obviously, but there was a pretty big consensus among all these very smart people that there was something specific about the German people, that there was a flaw or a defect or a susceptibility, a inferiority. That word being used. No sense of irony, history. Anyway, Milgram does the experiments. And much to his surprise and the surprise of all of those smart people, he was wrong. Right? Because Milgram found that it wasn't just something about the German character or integrity or German psychology, German heads and hearts that was susceptible to authoritarianism. It was something about being human. Something about being human. And I think that work was very powerful back then. I think that work is still powerful today. In fact, it might even be more powerful today. But I told you that this was a tragedy. I owe you an explanation about that. The tragedy is this. Despite learning that he was wrong, despite Milgram learning that he was wrong, despite all these other smart people learning that they were wrong, and despite many of the subjects learning that they were also wrong about susceptibility to authority, despite all of this knowledge that challenged everyone from Milgram to these smart people to the individual subjects, despite all that benefit, social sciences generally come to the consensus that that benefit is too costly. That people having their beliefs challenged so clearly and directly is more damaging to them than the benefit of knowing that they might be believing something that doesn't have a basis in science, in experimental testing. Social science has decided that it is too much of a risk to subjects to essentially give them information that might change their worldview. That's the tragedy. We can't do science like Milgram anymore. It's not seen as ethical by the academy. And yet, despite my problems with that, I still think that it's better than what YouTube is doing, that approach is better than what YouTube is doing. Because, when you do research in the academy, you have to respond to institutional review boards, to ethics boards. If you manipulate subjects in a way, if you lie to them, for instance, in an experiment, you have to make them aware of that manipulation down the line. You have to kind of tell them, you have to debrief them about what they went through and why they went through it. You have to make them whole. YouTube, industry, doesn't have any of those strictures, doesn't have any of that sense of responsibility built in. And in fact, YouTube, I guarantee you, YouTube is not the only company that thinks like that. In fact, just about any company that has a stock ticker or is looking to be bought out, like, they will do what YouTube does. And everyone just kind of points at everyone else and says, oh, well, everyone else is doing it, so that makes it okay, right? Like, we can lie to our subjects. It doesn't matter if it's potentially harming their psychology, their heads and their hearts. Like, we're just looking for margin. We're just looking for ways to keep them engaged. Like, we're responsible to our shareholders. That said, I don't think either of these approaches are good for social science. I don't think, this nannying, this overprotective cowardice doesn't do anything. This kind of profit driven manipulation also doesn't do anything. And it's a shame too, right? Because the best social science, and I've seen this, I've done this, I've seen other people do this. Like, the best social science can be used to ask and address the most important questions facing us, right? Whether it's, as individuals, as part of communities, even businesses. When it's well done, this stuff is fantastic. It's one of the most powerful tools we have. But in order for it to be powerful, in order for it to meet that potential, the science, the insight cannot be done in service of an individual researcher's ego. It can't be done in service of tenure or, in service of protecting people from themselves. It can't be done in service of a quarterly P&L. It can't be done in service of saying, oh, look, we got people to stay on platform an extra 7 minutes a day. The best social science is not done in service of those things. The best social science is done in service of our subjects. Now, remember that no matter what you've heard or what I've said, death comes for us all. A closed mouth never gets fed. Do the right thing, researchers. We'll talk again soon.